Have you ever wondered why some men seem to achieve everything they desire, while others remain trapped in cycles of mediocrity, frustration, and existential emptiness? Why do certain individuals radiate an inexplicable magnetism, a presence that commands attention and attracts opportunities, while others consume themselves in empty desires and fleeting pleasures? The answer isn't found in superficial self-help books or motivational formulas promising instant success. The truth lies hidden within the most primal and powerful force within you, your sexual energy. Napoleon Hill, the man who decoded the secrets of history's most influential millionaires, discovered something modern society prefers to ignore. He realized that behind every great achiever, every leader who transformed the world, every man who transcended his ordinary limitations, there was a common denominator. They had all learned to master and transmute their sexual energy, not to repress it, not to deny it, but to transform it into pure power, into irresistible magnetism, into a creative force capable of shaping reality. But before you allow yourself to delve into this revelation, you need to confront an uncomfortable truth about yourself. At this very moment, as you read these words, how many times today have you been overtaken by desire? How many hours this week have you wasted indulging in impulses that deep down you know weaken you? How many times have you felt that emptiness after succumbing to the calls of the flesh, promising yourself it would be the last time, only to repeat the same pattern a few hours later? You are not alone in this silent battle. Modern society has built an invisible trap around male sexual energy. On one hand, it's hypersexualized, transformed into a consumer product, sold on every digital corner, constantly stimulated through images, videos, and fantasies that keep men in a perpetual state of agitation and dissatisfaction. On the other hand, it's shamed, repressed, treated as something dirty or sinful, creating guilt and internal conflicts that fragment the male psyche. The result of this manipulation is a generation of men disconnected from their true power, addicted to instant gratification, trapped in cycles of immediate reward that drain their life force, their creativity, their ability to focus on larger goals. They have become slaves to their own impulses, believing that satisfying every desire is synonymous with freedom, when in reality it represents the deepest form of imprisonment. Hill observed that history's most powerful men, the Andrew Carnegies, the Henry Fords, the Thomas Edisons, all shared a singular characteristic. They had learned to channel their sexual energy toward transcendent purposes. They weren't asexual or repressed. On the contrary, they possessed intense sexual vitality, but they directed that energy toward building empires, toward innovation, toward manifesting visions that transformed the world. This isn't a puritanical or moralistic philosophy. This is an occult science, an inner alchemy that few men master. But when understood and applied, it unleashes a power that transcends any conventional motivational formula or success strategy. It's the secret behind the inexplicable charisma, the magnetic presence, the ability to influence and lead that some men possess naturally. Imagine for a moment that within you exists a nuclear reactor of creative energy. This energy can be wasted in small explosions that offer momentary pleasure, but leave you exhausted and empty, or it can be channeled and concentrated to generate sustained power capable of moving mountains. The difference between ordinary men and extraordinary men isn't the amount of energy they possess, but the wisdom with which they direct that energy. Sexual energy is the physical manifestation of the life force that animates the entire universe. It's the same energy that makes stars shine, that drives evolution, that creates life. When you allow this energy to dissipate through uncontrolled impulses, you're not just losing a few minutes of pleasure. You are literally wasting the force that could transform you into everything you have the potential to be. Hill discovered that there's a direct correlation between a man's ability to master his sexual impulses and his ability to master all other areas of life. The man who can't control his most primal desires will hardly be able to control his finances, his emotions, his relationships, or his career. Self-mastery begins with the mastery of sexual energy. But mastery doesn't mean repression, This is the trap many men fall into, especially those influenced by extreme religious doctrines or philosophies that demonize sexuality. Repressing sexual energy is like trying to contain the pressure of a boiler by closing all the escape valves. Eventually, the pressure will find a way to manifest, usually in destructive and compulsive ways. True mastery of sexual energy is like learning to drive an extremely powerful race car. You don't remove the engine to make it safe. You develop the skills, discipline, and awareness necessary to channel all that power in a controlled and directed manner. The result isn't the elimination of speed, but mastery over it. Sexual transmutation, as Hill defined it, is the process of redirecting sexual energy into channels that amplify all other human capabilities. When this energy is properly transmuted, it becomes fuel for creativity, determination, mental clarity, and personal magnetism. Men who master this art develop a presence that is immediately perceptible. They radiate a confidence that doesn't need to be proven, an inner strength that naturally attracts opportunities and people. Observe history's great leaders, and you'll discover they all possess this indefinable magnetic quality. It wasn't just superficial charisma or rhetorical skill. It was a fundamental energy emanating from their deepest core. They had learned to transform the most primal energy into a more refined expression, maintaining all the power but elevating its manifestation. The power of transmutation, mastering sexual energy. Napoleon recognized that most men waste this precious energy in two primary ways: through excessive indulgence or neurotic repression. Both extremes lead to the same outcome, the squandering of personal power. The man who compulsively gives in to sexual pleasures becomes a slave to his impulses, gradually losing his willpower, motivation, and ability to focus on long-term goals. The man who completely represses his sexuality creates internal tensions, psychological complexes, and a rigidity that blocks his creativity and spontaneity. Sexual transmutation demands a third path, the path of integral awareness. This path recognizes sexual energy as sacred and powerful, but chooses to consciously direct it towards higher manifestations. It's like transforming coal into a diamond through adequate pressure and time. The raw material remains the same, but its final expression is completely transformed. Hill observed that men who practice sexual transmutation develop distinctive characteristics. First, they possess superior mental clarity. The energy that would normally be dissipated through uncontrolled sexual impulses remains available for more complex mental processes. They can focus for longer periods, solve problems with greater creativity, and make decisions with less emotional interference. Second, they develop a magnetic presence that goes beyond physical appearance. This presence results from the concentrated and refined sexual energy radiating through their personality. People feel naturally drawn to this energy, even without consciously understanding what attracts them. It's as if these men operate on a different frequency, a frequency that resonates with the primordial power that exists within us all. Third, they demonstrate an extraordinary capacity for persistence and determination. Sexual energy, when transmuted, becomes fuel for ambition and the achievement of goals. Men who master this art can maintain focus on long-term projects, overcome obstacles that would discourage others, and manifest visions that seemed impossible. Fourth, they develop sharp intuition and an ability to perceive opportunities that others fail to see. Transmuted sexual energy seems to open more subtle channels of perception, allowing these men to pick up signals and possibilities that remain invisible to those who waste their vital energy. But how exactly does this process of transmutation work? How can a seemingly physical impulse be transformed into mental, creative, and spiritual power? To understand this, we need to recognize that sexual energy is not merely biological. It's a manifestation of the universal life force, the same energy that the ancients called chi, prana, or vital force. This energy flows through specific channels in the human body, concentrating mainly in the genital region, but having ramifications that extend throughout the nervous system, especially to the brain. When this energy is wasted through uncontrolled impulses, it drains not only physically, but also mentally and spiritually. When consciously conserved, it can be redirected through these same channels to fuel higher mental processes. The practice of sexual transmutation is not a new concept. Ancient traditions, from Chinese Taoists to Indian Brahmins, developed sophisticated systems to channel sexual energy for spiritual and creative purposes. What Hill did was translate these ancestral principles into the context of modern material and personal success, demonstrating how this ancient wisdom can be applied to create wealth, influence, and extraordinary achievements. The process begins with awareness. You must become completely aware of your sexual patterns, your impulses, your triggers, and your reactions. Most men live on sexual autopilot, reacting instinctively to stimuli without ever questioning or consciously directing their responses. The first step of transmutation is to get out of this state of unconsciousness and take active command of your sexual energy. This awareness demands brutal honesty with yourself. You must recognize how many times a day you think about sex, how many hours you spend consuming sexual content, how often you indulge in practices that drain your vital energy. You should observe how you feel before and after these activities, noting not only the physical sensations, but also the accompanying mental and emotional states. Most men will discover that there is a pattern of energy depletion associated with the uncontrolled use of sexual energy. After immediate gratification, feelings of emptiness, lack of motivation, decreased mental clarity, and a subtle but perceptible reduction in willpower often follow. This is not a moral judgment, but a physiological and energetic observation. Once this awareness is established, the next step is to develop the capacity for conscious choice. Instead of automatically reacting to sexual impulses, you learn to pause, observe the impulse, and then consciously decide how to respond. This pause is the space where real freedom exists. It's the difference between being a slave to your impulses and being their master. During this pause, you can ask a fundamental question. Can this energy be directed towards something higher at this moment? Perhaps you have a creative project that needs focused energy. Perhaps you have an important decision that requires mental clarity. Perhaps you have a long-term goal that would benefit from all your concentrated vital force. Transmutation is not simply the suppression of the sexual impulse. It's the conscious redirection of that energy into channels that amplify your capabilities. When you feel sexual energy arising, instead of dissipating it through immediate gratification, you channel it into intense mental, creative, or physical activity. You use it to fuel your ambition, your determination, your creativity. Hill observed that many of history's most creative men produced their most brilliant works during periods of intense sexual energy that was consciously redirected. The creative tension generated by this concentrated energy often resulted in innovations, discoveries, and achievements that would not be possible in states of dispersed energy. This practice requires discipline, but not the rigid discipline of repression. It's the flexible discipline of directed awareness. Like a conductor directing a powerful orchestra, you learn to guide your sexual energy to create symphonies of achievement in all areas of your life. A crucial aspect of this transformation is understanding that transmuted sexual energy doesn't disappear or diminish. It concentrates and intensifies. Men who practice transmutation often report an increase in their overall vitality, not a decrease. They feel more alive, more present, more capable of experiencing pleasure and satisfaction in all aspects of life. This happens because sexual energy, when not wasted, fuels all other systems of the body and mind. It strengthens the nervous system, increases physical stamina, improves mental clarity, and intensifies emotional perception. It's like discovering an inner energy source that was constantly being drained, now allowing it to nourish your entire being. Sexual transmutation also profoundly transforms how you relate to others, especially women. When you're not constantly seeking external sexual gratification, you stop projecting desperate needs onto others. You become more present, more genuine, more capable of authentic connections. Paradoxically, this independence from compulsive sexual need often results in richer and more fulfilling relationships. Women possess a natural sensitivity to detect men who have mastered their sexual energy. They instinctively perceive the difference between men who are slaves to their impulses and men who are masters of their vital energy. The presence of a man who has transmuted his sexual energy has a magnetic quality that goes far beyond superficial, physical attraction. It's an attraction to personal power, to inner strength, to the capacity for protection and leadership that naturally emanates from men who have mastered themselves. Hill noted that men who practiced sexual transmutation often became natural leaders in their fields. They radiated a confidence that didn't need to be proven, a determination that inspired others to follow them, a clarity of vision that cut through confusion and uncertainty. This leadership wasn't the result of learned techniques, but of the fundamental energy pulsing through their beings. The practice of transmutation also develops what we might call personal magnetism. This magnetism is different from the superficial charisma that can be artificially cultivated. It's a fundamental energetic attraction that arises when someone is operating with their full directed vital force. People are naturally drawn to this energy, even without consciously understanding why. Opportunities, resources, and valuable connections tend to flow naturally toward men who radiate this magnetism. But the journey of sexual transmutation is not an easy or linear path. It requires you to confront shadowy aspects of your psyche that most men prefer to ignore. You must confront your compulsive patterns, your unconscious escapes, your deep-seated fears related to personal power and the responsibility that comes with that power. Many men discover that their uncontrolled sexuality is, in fact, a way of avoiding larger responsibilities. It's easier to lose oneself in fantasies and immediate gratification than to face the challenges of building an extraordinary life. Wasted sexual energy becomes an unconscious excuse for mediocrity, a way to keep oneself small and avoid the hard work of personal transformation. Sexual transmutation forces you to abandon these excuses and confront your full potential. When you can no longer hide behind uncontrolled impulses, you must find other ways to channel your vital energy. You must discover purposes worthy of your full strength, goals that demand everything you have to offer. This confrontation with your full potential can be intimidating. Many men prefer to remain in familiar cycles of energy dissipation because it keeps them in a comfort zone, even if it's a dysfunctional comfort zone. Greatness demands responsibility, and responsibility demands that you become the most powerful and disciplined version of yourself. Hill observed that history's most successful men often went through intense periods of practicing sexual transmutation, especially during the years of building their fortunes and empires. They instinctively understood that they needed all their vital energy concentrated to manifest visions that transcended ordinary limitations. These men weren't motivated solely by material ambition. They were answering a deeper calling, an inner compulsion to manifest something meaningful with their lives. Transmuted sexual energy became the fuel for this manifestation, allowing them to maintain focus and determination through years of hard work, obstacles, and setbacks. The practice of sexual transmutation also develops what the ancients called spiritual willpower. This is different from ordinary willpower, which often depletes with use. Spiritual willpower is fueled by conserved vital energy and grows stronger with practice. It's like developing an energetic muscle that allows you to maintain discipline and focus in areas where you previously felt powerless. This expanded willpower manifests in all areas of life. Men who master sexual transmutation often find that they can maintain diets that were previously impossible, establish exercise routines that were previously unsustainable, focus on projects that were previously overwhelming. The discipline developed through mastering sexual energy generalizes to all other aspects of self-discipline. But perhaps the most transformative aspect of sexual transmutation is its effect on spiritual awareness. When sexual energy is elevated and refined, it becomes a vehicle for expanded states of consciousness. Many spiritual traditions recognize that sexual energy, when properly directed, can open portals to higher perceptions, deeper intuitions, and more intimate connections with universal wisdom. This isn't a vague mystical concept, but an experiential reality that can be verified through practice. Men who transmute their sexual energy often report periods of exceptional mental clarity, spontaneous creative insights, and a feeling of being connected to something larger than themselves. These states aren't permanent, but their frequency and intensity increase with consistent practice of transmutation. Hill recognized that this spiritual dimension of sexual transmutation was crucial for lasting success. Men who achieve extraordinary long-term accomplishments aren't driven solely by material motivations. They're connected to a deeper purpose, a sense of mission that transcends personal gain. Transmuted sexual energy seems to facilitate this connection to transcendent purposes. The journey of sexual transmutation also reveals the fundamental difference between pleasure and happiness. Most men confuse these two states, pursuing constant pleasure in the belief that it will result in happiness. But pleasure and happiness operate on entirely different planes. Pleasure is a temporary sensation requiring constant external stimulation. Happiness is a state of being that emerges from inner alignment and meaningful purpose. Men who transmute their sexual energy discover that, while they may experience fewer instant pleasures, their capacity for deep and sustained happiness dramatically increases. They develop an inner satisfaction that doesn't depend on constant external gratification. This independence from external pleasures is, in itself, a form of extraordinary freedom. This freedom allows them to make choices based on long-term wisdom, not short-term impulses. They can evaluate opportunities, relationships, and decisions from a broader perspective, considering consequences that extend far beyond immediate gratification. This capacity for long-term thinking is one of the hallmarks of all great achievers. Sexual transmutation also transforms a man's relationship with fear. Many male fears are, at their core, related to insecurity about personal power and the ability to protect and provide. When a man masters his most fundamental life force, he develops an inner confidence that can't be shaken by external circumstances. He knows on a visceral level that he possesses the inner resources to meet any challenge. This confidence isn't arrogance or superficial bravado. It's a quiet certainty that emerges from self-mastery. Men who possess this quality don't need to constantly prove their power because they feel it pulsing through their beings every moment. They can be gentle without being weak, humble without being submissive, patient without being passive. Hill observed that this transformation in the relationship with fear often resulted in a greater willingness to take calculated risks. Men who transmuted their sexual energy were no longer paralyzed by the fear of failure because they knew they possessed the vital energy to recover from any setback. This willingness to take intelligent risks was often the determining factor in their extraordinary accomplishments. The practice of sexual transmutation also develops what we might call energetic intelligence. This is the ability to consciously perceive and work with the subtle energies that permeate all human interactions. Men who master this art can sense the energy of environments, people, and situations with an accuracy that seems almost supernatural. This energetic sensitivity allows them to navigate social and professional situations with exceptional skill. They know when to speak and when to remain silent, when to aggressively advance, and when to strategically retreat, when to directly influence, and when to operate behind the scenes. This energetic intelligence often manifests as what people call business acumen or a natural talent for leadership. But the journey of sexual transmutation requires you to confront one of the most challenging truths about human nature. Most people don't want you to transcend your limitations. There's a subtle but constant social pressure to remain at the level of mediocrity that most accept as normal. Men who begin to radiate the power that comes from transmuted sexual energy often encounter resistance from friends, family, and colleagues who feel threatened by this transformation. This resistance can be particularly intense because transmuted sexual energy threatens social control systems that depend on men being slaves to their impulses. Men who master their vital energy are harder to manipulate, less likely to accept inadequate conditions, and more capable of creating independent value. They represent a threat to structures that depend on dependence and conformity. Therefore, the practice of sexual transmutation often requires you to develop the courage to stay true to your path, even when facing social disapproval. You must be willing to be misunderstood, criticized, and even isolated by those who cannot comprehend or accept your transformation. This is one of the reasons why few men persist on this path long enough to experience its full benefits. Hill found that the most successful men often created inner circles of other men who shared similar values. These circles provided the support and understanding necessary to sustain practices that went against prevailing social norms. The loneliness of personal transformation can be mitigated through connections with others who are traveling similar paths. Sexual transmutation also reveals the crucial importance of purpose in a man's life. Without a purpose that is larger than personal gratification, it's nearly impossible to sustain the discipline required to consistently transmute sexual energy. Purpose provides the channel into which energy can be directed, the reason why short-term sacrifices are worthwhile. This purpose doesn't need to be grandiose or universally recognized. It could be the creation of a business that provides genuine value, the development of artistic skills that deeply touch others, the building of a strong and loving family, or the contribution to causes that transcend personal interests. What matters is not the scale of the purpose, but its ability to inspire you to channel your vital energy into something greater than immediate gratification. Hill observed that men with clear and meaningful purposes naturally developed the capacity to transmute sexual energy, even without conscious knowledge of the principles involved. Purpose created a magnetic pull that automatically redirected energy from lesser impulses to the manifestation of greater visions. The practice of sexual transmutation profoundly transforms a man's relationship with time. When you're not constantly seeking immediate gratification, you develop a long-term perspective that allows for the planning and execution of projects unfolding over years or decades. This expanded temporal orientation is a hallmark of all great legacy builders. This temporal transformation also manifests as a greater capacity for presence. Paradoxically, when you stop chasing future pleasures constantly, you become more capable of fully experiencing the present moment. The energy that was being wasted on fantasies and anticipations becomes available for complete engagement with immediate reality. Sexual energy transmutation also reveals a profound truth about the nature of masculine creativity. All genuine creation requires a marriage between masculine and feminine elements, between directed force and open receptivity, between structure and fluidity. Sexual energy represents the masculine creative principle in its purest form. When this energy is refined and consciously directed, it becomes capable of fertilizing ideas, projects, and visions in ways that transcend the ordinary limitations of creativity. Artists, inventors, entrepreneurs, and innovators who have mastered sexual transmutation often report periods of explosive creativity that seem to emerge from sources beyond their conscious minds. They describe sensations of channeling something larger than themselves, of being vehicles for expressions that transcend their normal capabilities. This is not fantasy, but the natural outcome of refined sexual energy directed into creative channels. The journey of sexual transmutation also teaches fundamental lessons about the nature of genuine power. Real power doesn't come from dominating others, but from mastering oneself. It doesn't arise from the imposition of external will, but from the alignment of personal will with higher principles. Men who transmute their sexual energy develop a power that is simultaneously humble and irresistible, gentle and implacable. This power is especially evident in the ability to influence others in positive ways. Men radiating transmuted sexual energy naturally inspire others to raise their own standards. They don't need to preach or explicitly teach. Their very presence serves as a reminder of higher potentials. This silent influence often has more lasting impacts than any form of verbal persuasion. Hill recognized that this form of leadership by example was one of the most powerful forces for social transformation. When individual men transcend their ordinary limitations through sexual transmutation, they create ripples that spread through their communities, families, and professional fields. Personal transformation becomes a catalyst for collective transformation. The practice of sexual transmutation also reveals the importance of patience in manifesting extraordinary achievements. Wasted sexual energy creates an instant gratification mentality incompatible with projects requiring years or decades to mature. When this energy is conserved and redirected, a natural ability to sustain efforts over extended periods develops. This patience isn't passive or resigned. It's an active patience, fueled by the certainty that consistently applied energy will eventually produce results. It's the patience of the gardener who plants seeds, knowing that, with proper care, they will eventually become majestic trees. This expanded temporal perspective allows men to undertake projects that seem impossible to those trapped in short-term mentalities. Sexual transmutation also transforms the experience of work. When you possess abundant and directed vital energy, work ceases to be a laborious drain and becomes a natural expression of your inner strength. Men who transmute their sexual energy often find they can work for longer periods with less fatigue, maintain intense focus without mental exhaustion, and find genuine satisfaction in activities that previously seemed monotonous or challenging. This transformation in the experience of work isn't the result of artificial motivation or superficial productivity techniques. It's the natural consequence of having access to reservoirs of energy that would normally be wasted. When your vital energy isn't constantly being drained through uncontrolled impulses, it becomes available to fuel any activity you choose to undertake. Hill observed that men who practice sexual transmutation developed what he termed the capacity for concentrated work. They could focus completely on a task for hours without distraction, maintaining levels of attention and quality impossible for those operating with dispersed energy. This capacity for intense concentration often compensated for any advantage others might have in terms of natural talent or external resources. The practice of transmutation also reveals a surprising truth about the nature of stress. Much of what we experience as stress is, in fact, the result of misdirected vital energy. When you're constantly battling inner impulses, dissipating energy through channels leading nowhere, creating tension between what you know you should do and what you actually do, the natural result is a state of chronic stress. Sexual transmutation eliminates many of the internal sources of stress because it aligns your actions with your deepest values. When you're no longer at war with yourself, when your energy is flowing in the direction of your consciously chosen goals, the result is a sense of integrity and flow that is naturally relaxing, even amidst intense activity. This reduction in internal stress has cascading effects on all areas of physical and mental health. Men who transmute their sexual energy often report better sleep quality, a stronger immune system, a more stable mood, and greater resilience to external pressures. It's not that they avoid challenges or difficulties, but they face them from a foundation of inner strength that makes these experiences less devastating. The journey of sexual transmutation also teaches profound lessons about the nature of true masculinity. Modern culture often conflates masculinity with sexual dominance, compulsive conquest, or the uncontrolled expression of impulses. But genuine masculinity, as revealed through the practice of transmutation, is about self-mastery, the conscientious direction of inner strength, and the ability to channel power for constructive purposes. The truly masculine man is not one who is a slave to his impulses, but one who masters them. He is not one who needs to constantly prove his manhood through superficial conquests, but one who radiates power so naturally that he doesn't need to prove it. This refined masculinity is simultaneously more powerful and more gentle than the toxic masculinity our culture often promotes. This transformed understanding of masculinity also drastically improves a man's relationships with women. When he is not operating from compulsive need or sexual insecurity, he can relate to women as an equal, offering strength and stability without desperate expectations or subtle manipulation. This shift in dynamics often results in deeper, more respectful and mutually satisfying relationships. Sexual transmutation further reveals that masculine sexual energy, when properly refined, possesses naturally protective and nurturing qualities. Men who master this energy develop an instinctive ability to create safe and supportive environments for those around them. They become beacons of stability in an often chaotic world, offering leadership that is not domineering, but inspiring. Hill noted that this protective quality of transmuted sexual energy often manifested in the ability to build lasting structures, businesses, organizations, communities that continued to thrive long after their founders were no longer actively involved. It was as if the refined energy of these men imbued their creations with a vitality of their own. The practice of transmutation also develops what we might call existential resilience. This is the ability to maintain purpose and direction even in the face of uncertainty, adversity, or disillusionment. Men who transmute their sexual energy develop an inner source of meaning that does not depend on external validation or favorable circumstances. This existential resilience is crucial for navigating the inevitable challenges that accompany any meaningful life. Projects fail, relationships end, economies collapse, health declines. Men who depend on external sources of energy and motivation often disintegrate when confronted with these realities. But those who have cultivated inner reservoirs of vital force possess the resources to not only survive these experiences, but to grow through them. Sexual transmutation also reveals the importance of solitude in a man's life. Not the solitude of isolation or avoidance, but the chosen solitude that allows for deep reflection, connection with inner purpose, and the replenishment of vital energy. Men who are constantly seeking external sexual stimulation rarely develop the capacity to be alone with themselves in a comfortable and productive way. This capacity for productive solitude is where many of the greatest achievements are conceived and refined. It is in moments of inner quietude that visions emerge, that creative connections are made, that plans are formulated with clarity and precision. Men who transmute their sexual energy often find that their periods of solitude become their most fertile and inspiring moments. The journey of transmutation also teaches about the cyclical nature of masculine energy. Just as there are seasons in nature, there are natural cycles in masculine sexual energy. Men who learn to work with these cycles rather than against them are able to optimize their productivity and creativity in ways that seem almost supernatural to those who do not understand these rhythms. During periods of high sexual energy, they channel this force into projects that require intensity and focus. During periods of lower energy, they dedicate themselves to activities that require reflection, planning, or consolidation. This conscious dance with the natural rhythms of vital energy allows them to maintain high levels of performance over extended periods without exhaustion or burnout. Hill observed that the most productive men often developed an intuitive sensitivity to these cycles, even without formal knowledge of the principles involved. They instinctively knew when to push intensely and when to allow for periods of recovery and integration. This bodily wisdom was often the determining factor in their ability to sustain extraordinary achievements over decades. Sexual transmutation also reveals profound truths about the nature of abundance. Men who are constantly squandering vital energy operate from a scarcity mindset, always seeking more stimulation, more gratification, more external validation. This scarcity mindset generalizes to all other areas of life, creating patterns of thought and behavior that limit their ability to create and attract genuine abundance. When sexual energy is conserved and transmuted, a mindset of abundance naturally develops. Men who have access to reservoirs of unwasted vital energy feel abundant on a fundamental level. This feeling of inner abundance allows them to operate from generosity, confidence, and expansive vision, qualities that naturally attract opportunities and resources. This inner abundance also manifests as an ability to give without depletion. Men who transmute their sexual energy discover that they can contribute generously to their relationships, projects, and communities without feeling that they are losing something. It is like having access to an inexhaustible source of energy that renews itself through the very act of consciously directed giving. The practice of transmutation also develops what the ancients called magnetic presence. This is an indefinable but immediately perceptible quality that some people possess naturally, but which can be cultivated through the conservation and refinement of sexual energy. Men who radiate magnetic presence exert a natural influence on environments and people, not through manipulation or learned techniques, but through the fundamental energetic force emanating from their beings. This magnetic presence is especially powerful in leadership situations. When a man walks into a room radiating transmuted sexual energy, other people instinctively sense his inner strength. They may not consciously understand what they are perceiving, but they respond naturally to the authority emanating from someone who has mastered himself on fundamental levels. The power of transmutation. A man's journey to Mastery Hill discovered that this magnetic presence was often the deciding factor in important negotiations, investment decisions, and leadership opportunities. Men who possessed this quality could influence outcomes in ways that seemed disproportionate to their logical arguments or formal credentials. It was as if they operated on a power frequency that was immediately recognized by others, even unconsciously. Sexual transmutation also profoundly transforms the experience of fear and courage. When you know on a visceral level that you possess abundant energetic resources to meet any challenge, fear loses much of its paralyzing power. It's not that fears disappear entirely, but they become useful information rather than controlling forces. This transformation in the relationship with fear allows men to take actions that would be impossible from states of depleted energy. They can confront difficult conflicts, take calculated risks, defend unpopular principles, and pursue ambitious visions because they possess a visceral confidence in their ability to handle whatever consequences may arise. The courage that emerges from transmuted sexual energy is not the desperate courage of someone who has nothing to lose, but the quiet courage of someone who possesses abundant inner resources. This form of courage is especially effective because it's sustainable over time and doesn't depend on temporary emotional states to maintain itself. The journey of transmutation also teaches about the importance of integrity in manifesting genuine power. When you are conserving and directing your most fundamental life energy, any misalignment between your stated values and your actual actions creates internal turbulence that disperses that energy. Sexual transmutation demands and rewards increasing levels of personal integrity. This demand for integrity acts as a natural purification mechanism. As you progress in the practice of transmutation, you are forced to abandon behaviors, relationships, and commitments that are not aligned with your highest values. This process may be temporarily uncomfortable, but it results in a simpler, more focused, and more powerful life. Hill observed that men who sustained practices of sexual transmutation over years often underwent transformations of character that were noticeable even to casual observers. They developed a reliability, honesty, and consistency that became trademarks of their personalities. This refined integrity wasn't the result of forced moral effort, but the natural expression of consciously aligned life energy. Sexual transmutation further reveals surprising truths about the nature of aging. Men who consistently conserve and transmute their sexual energy over decades often maintain physical vitality, mental clarity, and emotional enthusiasm that are extraordinary for their chronological ages. It's as if the conservation of life, energy slows or even reverses some aspects of the aging process. This sustained vitality is not merely a matter of physical appearance, although that is often evident. It's a fundamental energetic quality that manifests as continued curiosity, capacity to learn and adapt, willingness to embrace new challenges, and the maintenance of dreams and ambitions that many men abandon in the middle decades of their lives. The practice of transmutation also develops what we might call energetic wisdom, the ability to perceive and consciously work with the subtle currents of energy that flow through all situations and relationships. Men who cultivate this sensitivity are able to navigate social, professional, and personal complexities with a skill that seems almost intuitive. This energetic wisdom allows them to sense when a situation is ripening for action, when it's better to step back and observe, when to apply pressure, and when to allow events to unfold naturally. It's like having access to an internal navigation system that operates through energetic perception rather than purely logical analysis. As we approach the conclusion of this journey through the mysteries of sexual transmutation, it's important to recognize that what you have just explored is not merely abstract theory or philosophy. It's a practical map for the most fundamental transformation a man can undertake. The journey from slave to his impulses to master of his vital energy. Napoleon Hill wasn't promoting an ascetic philosophy or a denial of human sexuality. He was revealing a secret that few men discover, that the same energy that can enslave you through uncontrolled impulses can liberate you through conscious direction. The choice between slavery and freedom, between mediocrity and greatness, between ordinary and extraordinary life, often comes down to how you choose to work with this fundamental force that pulses through your being. The men who built the empires, who created the innovations, who led the transformations that shaped our civilization, were no different from you in terms of basic life energy. They simply learned to channel that energy into manifestations that transcended immediate personal gratification. They discovered that real power doesn't come from the satisfaction of every desire, but from conscious mastery over desire itself. This isn't a journey that can be completed through temporary willpower or superficial motivation. It's a transformation that requires you to confront aspects of yourself that you've preferred to avoid, to abandon familiar patterns that keep you small, to take responsibility for the power that has always existed within you, but that you may have feared acknowledging. The path of sexual transmutation is simultaneously the simplest and the most challenging a man can travel. It's simple because it requires only one decision: to stop wasting your vital energy and begin to consciously direct it. It's challenging because that decision must be renewed in every moment, especially in the early stages, when old patterns exert their strongest influence. But for those who persevere, who maintain the vision of who they can become even when facing the resistance of who they have been, the rewards transcend any temporary sacrifice. They discover reservoirs of energy they didn't know they possessed, capacities they didn't imagine were possible, a presence and power that transforms not only their own lives, but the lives of everyone around them. Transmuted sexual energy becomes the secret fire that fuels all other achievements. It's the invisible fuel that allows sustained mental clarity, the magnetic force that attracts opportunities and resources, the wellspring of courage that makes facing any challenge possible, the foundation of integrity upon which an extraordinary life can be built. While other men remain trapped in cycles of gratification and depletion, externally seeking what can only be found internally, you now possess the knowledge to transcend these limitations. You understand that true power doesn't reside in the satisfaction of every urge, but in conscious mastery over the urge itself. You recognize that the most potent force you possess shouldn't be wasted on fleeting pleasures, but cultivated and channeled into the creation of something that endures beyond your physical existence. The journey that stretches before you is not a journey for the faint of heart or for those seeking easy solutions. It's a journey for warriors, not warriors of external battles, but warriors of inner transformation. It's for men willing to trade temporary pleasures for lasting power, immediate gratification for meaningful achievements, social approval for personal integrity. You are being called to become an alchemist of your own life force, transforming the lead of base impulses into the gold of conscious achievement. You are being invited to awaken the sleeping giant that exists within you, not through superficial motivational techniques, but through mastery of the most fundamental force that animates your existence. The world needs men who have transcended their ordinary limitations, who radiate refined power instead of brute force, who lead by example instead of domination, who create lasting value instead of merely seeking personal gain. The world needs men who have understood that true masculinity isn't about compulsive conquest, but about conscious self-mastery. This is your opportunity to join the ranks of these extraordinary men. Not because you were born with some special advantage, but because you are willing to do the work that most won't. You are willing to face yourself honestly, to abandon patterns that limit you, and to take responsibility for the power that has always been available to you. The sexual energy pulsing through your body right now is not merely biological urge. It's pure life force, the same power that made stars shine and that drives all evolution. When you learn to consciously work with this force, when you refine and direct it toward purposes that transcend personal gratification, you become a conscious collaborator in the creative process of the universe. Your life doesn't have to be ordinary. Your achievements don't have to be limited by the expectations others have of you or by the limitations you've accepted about yourself. The power to transcend all of that already exists within you, waiting only for your decision to acknowledge it, cultivate it, and consciously direct it. The journey of sexual transmutation is ultimately a journey back home, to the home of your true power, your authentic strength, the extraordinary man you've always had the potential to be. It's a journey that cannot be taken for you by anyone else, but that also doesn't need to be taken alone. Others have walked this path before you, leaving footprints you can follow. The fire of transformation has already begun to burn within you simply through the recognition of these truths. Now you must decide whether you will allow that fire to become a sustained flame that illuminates every aspect of your existence, or whether you will allow it to be extinguished through neglect and a return to familiar patterns. The choice is yours. The power is yours. The moment is now. The sexual energy you possess at this very instant can be the fuel that launches you toward greatness or the force that keeps you trapped in mediocrity. The difference lies not in the energy itself, but in the consciousness and direction you bring to it. Rise up, extraordinary man. Acknowledge the power pulsing through every cell of your body. Take conscious command of the life force that is yours by right. Begin today the journey of transmutation that will transform not only you, but all those whose lives you touch. The world is waiting for the unique contribution that only you can offer, and that contribution awaits only your decision to unleash the power that has always resided within you. Transmuted sexual energy is the key that unlocks the door to all that you are capable of becoming. Use that key. Open that door. Enter the realm of extraordinary achievement that is your natural destiny when you learn to consciously dance with the most powerful force that exists within you.